So there are two ways to grow from here. One is build the tree taller, make it look more impressive, easy to see from the highway, think how your business looks on paper. And the other one is to actually enjoy the fruit that comes from the tree, right? Think of the rewards for your labor. So if you're a founder-led business, having reached a million a year, really close to a million a year, or well beyond a million a year, chances are you built something that works, but you're now ready to start tasting the fruit, or you have started to taste the fruit and something feels off. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So this is what I do all day, every day. And if we haven't met before, hey, my name's Colby. And today I want to talk to you about a handful of things to make that fruit taste better, right? Because having a business, you're actually going to want the rewards of your labors to be something that enhances your life. So we're going to talk about four things today. One, we're going to talk about the conviction room. I just call it the room. Two, we're going to talk about surface and root. Then we're going to talk about something called center out. And then we're going to end with filters after that. So let's actually make sure that you're in the right room. I've served all sorts of people. I currently have clients in totally different verticals, all different revenue stages. But the person who resonates most with my message seems to be someone who is approaching a million a year or has passed a million a year. And basically, the long story short is you're a founder of that business, an executive of that business, a high-ranking official in that business, and you are really fucking capable. Like you are capable as hell, right? In fact, you're the person who is totally fine with struggle and all that sort of stuff. But you've reached this kind of turning point now to where you've worked so hard, you're wondering like, is this it? And the question kind of goes from not can I keep winning, because you can, you have been winning, everything looks successful on paper. The question is now transitioning to, do I want to keep winning this way? So everything I do is completely private, high touch, one-to-one, but I do want to share a few transformations. Now, I'm going to keep these completely anonymous and all that sort of stuff because, like I said, it is private. And I don't want somebody's transformation and turning point to be shown as some screenshot and marketing confetti. What I want to do is basically just kind of say where these people were at, and then we can apply how the work transformed them over time. So one transformation, and this is actually in progress, which I think is really valuable too, is not just, hey, the big flashing and lights at the end. This person really values their time, right? But they have this massive retainer that takes 96 hours a month of their time. And so by using something in the room that we call center out, and I'll talk more on that later, this person identified that this highest paying client that's taking 96 hours a month is actually going to be the thing that limits them from getting to the next revenue marker and the next level because of the expense with them. And we'll talk about that transformation as it's happening in real time. Another client let creativity lead for just 1 week, and his previous best workshop had around 80 to 90 people in it. The most recent one where he let creativity lead had 264 people in it. Another client didn't actually sign anybody and still hasn't signed anybody the whole time we've been working together, but she was working holidays, nights, weekends, and she values her family a lot. She'd been planning a trip to Disney for 10 years. So through our work, instead of signing clients, we cut her expenses. She now has more profit than ever, and she booked that trip to Disney. And all my clients, because it's so unique and one-on-one, they all do different things, right? Some of them have unfortunately ended relationships, but that was the right move to do. Others have traveled to faraway places for things they'd been putting off for a long, long time. And one of my favorites is a client has now made a ritual of going to the movies every Tuesday afternoon, completely guilt-free, when he used to be tied to his business. And that's the important thing, is these people didn't get these results, these things they really wanted by some massive step-by-step or huge strategy, right? They didn't have to attend this mastermind or take some course and go through some curriculum. All these people already knew the answer. They needed to look inward instead of constantly focusing on how do I make this tree with rotten fruit really, really impressive. And the moment that gives this away is when you know what the next smart move is, but you see that smart move as a brick that's actually building that prison rather than the palace. You got into business for it to enhance your life, not make it worse. How I describe this is that the business obviously works, but the root of that tree feels off. Everything looks really impressive on paper, but it feels kind of like shit. And it's one of those things to where you're no longer worried about, can you handle hard things? You've proven evidence that you can handle hard things. Now you're starting to wonder, am I suffering for the wrong thing? And that's a really important distinction that we're going to talk about. I'm obsessed with the root of the tree. I want that fruit to taste like the best fruit you've ever tasted, and that's the work I do, right? And I subscribe to this thing that really what you have is the right problem. You want your life to get better as your business gets bigger. That is the most amazing problem to solve. You need the right room to match it. And there's just a lot of people with the right problem using the wrong room to solve it. So let's talk about the rooms that are available because, I'm certainly not the only one who can help you. So the first one is therapy, right? And therapy can be really, really powerful. It's an amazing room, but it tends to look backwards on the past, right? Things to fix, things to address, and all that sort of stuff. And that's just not a room for the type of person I serve. They are forward thinking. They want to focus on their conviction and how to build the life they want with the business they want to run. Then there's business coaching, really valuable, amazing, but it really focuses on screenshots, tactics, funnels, strategies, all that sort of stuff. Those are useful problems. I've paid for those, but I would call those surface problems, right? And the problem is if you are using surface solutions to solve a root problem, it's just going to make you build the thing that isn't really giving you the life you want faster. Then there's courses and roadmaps when you need more information, and those are super helpful. I just find the person I help already has the answer inside their head. They don't need more information. The information they need is actually buried under 2 inches of dirt. And so when you add more information to it, that's really just adding more dirt. What the people I help need is not more dirt. They need a broom to sweep away the stuff to reveal the answer that's already within. Group coaching can help with community and give you perspective. But if you're performing even a little bit inside of that group, you're not telling the full truth. And truth is a complete non-negotiable for proper transformation. Then there's AI and tools, and of course they can help you think faster. They can help you brainstorm. They can help you construct, but they can't hold the room, right? They can't catch you when you told that little white lie. They can't necessarily grab onto context, and they certainly aren't going to look beyond and care about your life more than the prompts you give them. So the question isn't, are these rooms good or bad? And they're mostly good rooms, right? I've used these rooms. The question is more, are you trying to solve the right problem by using the wrong room? So if that question piques curiosity, here's my take. Because all of these rooms are kind of forgetting the most important thing. The best person to hit your potential, to step into your identity, is you. You're the one best equipped to make the fruit taste better. And so what we really need to work on is how that person makes decisions. And that's where conviction comes in. So let me ask you a question. I love to ask everybody this. Who do you spend every second of every day of your life with? It's you, right? Now, wouldn't we want that to be the person you trust the most? See, conviction is your ability to make honest decisions from the root rather than reactive decisions from all the noise surrounding you, right? And you deserve to trust yourself more than anything else, because conviction means that you have full self-trust, belief, faith that the decisions you make today are the right decisions at the right time to serve your future. Conviction is not hype. It's not pretending everything will work. It's not blind confidence, positive thinking, or forcing certainty over fear. It says no more outsourcing judgment, no more borrowing certainty from louder rooms, no more calling self-betrayal a strategy, no more abandoning your own read every time the world gets noisy on you. So what do I mean by conviction? Well, let's use myself as an example. So I have this thing called the North Star, right? And the North Star for me is to hit my potential by helping the most people hit theirs. And very much like the real North Star, it's a fixed point, but it's not a fixed goal, because I never know how close or how far away I am from the North Star, but I have the direction. I always know it's north, right? And the beautiful thing about this, think direction versus goals, is when you talk about goals, and I've asked hundreds of people about their goals, I say, what happens when you didn't hit it? Well, I beat myself up. What happens when you did hit it? I enjoyed it for about 30 seconds and said, is this it? And so by having a North Star, instead of actually having a fixed goal that's tied to my identity, I have a direction tied to my identity. And this makes the most amazing filter in life, right? Because I'm either stepping towards it or I'm stepping away from it, right? You're never neutral. And now, because it's so clear, much like the North Star, it is one of those things that through that filter, the decisions I make are damn near automatic and have full conviction behind them. And another core belief of mine is that a great life is just a bunch of great days, which begs the question then, what does a great day mean for me? Because a great day is down to the individual. And for me, it's really simple. Did I have coffee? Did I read something? Did I write something? Did I help someone? And most days I've done that by like 10 a.m., which means serving clients, helping people, creating stuff. The majority of my life is spent in bonus time. It is a banging life to know that most of it's in bonus time. The fruit tastes insanely good. And this is what I work with clients on almost from day one. What does a great day mean to you? Because if you can stack a bunch of great days, you create a great life. So what's most important is that conviction comes from the individual, from you. What do you value the most to have a great day, to live a great life? And that's where center out and filters come in. So let me tell you about those. This is where other rooms fall short, right? They start with the curriculum, right? But in my world, you are the curriculum, the individual. So there's no dashboards, there's no fancy metrics, there's no performative bullshit. We start with the center, which is to say your values. So let me explain. The real problem is that you start on the outside in. You start with the tactic. Maybe the question is, what do I think will work, right? And maybe if there's time, that tactic will be part of a larger strategy. And then you execute these things and wonder why, even if you do get the result, it feels misaligned. The fruit tastes rotten or off or metallic. Center out is different. When you strip everything else away, all that's left are your values. So we start there, the center. And values are what you believe. And then we step out and say, based on my belief, what do I believe is true for me? Those are principles. And given those values and principles, you have a very clear filter to say, what strategy do I want? Which is, how do I intend to win given my values and my principles? And once you have the strategy, then you get to the tactics, which are the individual moves within the strategy. That's like me stepping towards my North Star. What individual move do I want to make that fully aligns with my values and what I believe is true for me? So then it becomes really clear. Anything that doesn't pass through your values creates misalignment, right? And sometimes it's voluntary misalignment, as in like you know that it doesn't align with you, but you can see it as a piece of a larger whole. And those are the areas where suffering makes sense because you're thinking about it through the lens of values. But most of the time, it's involuntary misalignment because you simply didn't take the time to say, what's important to me? What's a great day to me? What is my value that I can filter this through? And just that alone is where the majority of your despair is coming from. You are doing a lot, you're busy as hell, but very little of it makes sense, right? So, to give you an example, we do this with all my clients. Last week, I had a client where we went through her values, right? And she was feeling really tied to the business and completely inauthentic in the business. And shock, authenticity is her number one core value. And the moment she could identify it, she started looking at individual pieces in her brick and mortar business and said, I'm not being authentic there. That's not authentic to me there. That's not authentic to me there. And by simply identifying the values, it started to become automatic in terms of what decisions she could make to lean more and start from the center out rather than the outside in. So early on in this video, I gave examples of transformations with clients, right? And those are always down to the individual. And yes, I'm going to keep them anonymous. But now let's actually filter it through center out and the room, right? So that one client who had the big retainer, which is taking 96 hours a month, this client, her number one value is kindness, right? But what we learned through the exercise, because she's also getting married next year and she's currently tied to the business and she has big concerns about where will I be able to put my phone down on my wedding day? We've learned that kindness doesn't just mean saying yes to everybody. Kindness means starting with yourself first so that we could fill her cup by focusing on what she needs, from self-care to creative outlets to whatever it is, fill up her kindness cup. So instead of drawing from a half empty one and giving kindness to other people at 50% or 60%, she could have a cup that's 100% that overflows into other. And in so doing, that client who is taking 96 hours a month is starting to illuminate to her that there's probably a different way. And at the time is actually more valuable than just the cash collected from that person. And the final thing with her too is she does have a goal. She said she wants to be great. She actually said in our first meeting, I'm not a fucking sheep. All right, well, then the cool thing about conviction and when you have support is, hey, not every decision is going to be easy. But when you have the filter, when you go through center out, the hard decisions seem very clear. You either make it and you advance, or you shy away from it and you stay where you're at. Another client of mine, and this man is so impressive, right, has made something like 1.5 million in the last 18 months as a solo business owner. And in one of our sessions, his, what he calls pressing the buttons, is he's really good at selling low ticket, and then he nurtures them really well, and then he ascends them into clients. But after identifying that that's how he presses the buttons, he said, I don't really like pressing the same old buttons. I feel like I've been here for like 4 years. And so he has a new product coming out. And it's this AI studio. He's an absolute wizard with Claude Code and all that sort of stuff. And just based on what I heard in the room, I said, okay, how are you planning to market this? And he was going to do it as low ticket and then ascend people. And I said, but you just said you don't want to press the buttons. Sounds like we shouldn't press the buttons. And in that same session, we identified that creativity is his number one value. And so pressing the buttons, he felt like the business operator was his number one, right? They were driving the car and creativity would have to use the scraps left in the back seat. And so I said, let's just reverse those. So let's put creativity as the driver of the car and let's have your business operator sit in the back seat, not completely absent, still there, just in the back seat, letting the creativity drive for just 1 week. No stake, your business can last 1 week. And in that week, it was amazing. He didn't even really know the next logical step. He was just letting his intuition be his guide. And he tied this AI studio, this thing that he built that was really, really cool, to a story about his granddad. And his granddad had this wonderful statement that left a lasting impression on him before he passed, which is, when you've had enough to eat, feed others. And that sparked in his mind, I want to be creative with how I market this. And so instead, he wanted to give the AI studio away for free and then added a $1 workshop to where people could learn how it works. And that $1 would be a donation in his granddad's name. And so where he had his best workshop was around 80 to 90 people prior to us working together. This workshop pulled in 264 people. He broke Stripe 4 times because the traffic being in demand. The workshop was phenomenal. He had to upgrade his Google Meet account so he could accommodate everybody. And that's the amazing result of letting your values lead, right? When the business operator led, very talented, grew an impressive tree, could still get 80 to 100 people into a workshop. But when creativity led, he got 3x his best result. Another client of mine, she came in saying she wanted to scale. And very quickly, her favorite job is being a mom. And so she wanted to scale a business that was already taking nights, holidays, and weekends. She was working every Thanksgiving, every Christmas Eve. And she told me with eyes lit up that she's always wanted to take her family to Disney. She has 2 kids and she had been planning to take them to Disney since before they were born. This trip was 10 years in the making. And so, based on the room, instead of saying, hey, you want to scale, let's do what you want, we let truth be the number one voice in the room. And truth was saying, you value family more than you value scale. So what if we actually didn't focus on getting clients? What if we made your business feel better? And so she eliminated a bunch of expenses. As it stands now, she still hasn't signed a new client. She's really good at retaining her current ones. She's making more profit than ever. She's only working around 3 hours a day, 4 days a week, so she can be a mom most of the time. And she took her kids to Disney within a couple months of us starting to work together. And she knew in that moment where Disney has the fireworks show every night in Magic Kingdom, and she's looking at her daughter's face, looking up at the fireworks, and she's like, this is what matters to me. So when we let family be the driver, everything fell into place. And she's a perfect example of, as you begin on the way reveals itself. Her plan was to scale, but the way told her prioritize family, and all these things fell in. And I always think it's good to share a story when a client is like really skeptical, right? And I know I'm not for everybody. And I talk about flow and I talk about simple and I talk about all these things that, hey, we don't need to have this complex thing. We, as human beings, we tend to skip over simple to get to complex and say, no, I need the big strategy. I need all the tactics. I need to pay this massive expense for somebody's brain that, I'm just too scared to like do myself. I'm going to outsource it. And this client was kind of like that, to where, talking about flow a lot, she had this limiting belief that if I'm not busy, I am lazy, right? If I'm not just constantly on, I'm not being useful. Yet her number one value is being bold, right? And she even had a list of clients she wanted to work with. But she kept saying yes to all these other things too, because if I'm not saying yes to these things, I'm not being a responsible business owner. I'm not growing the business. And instead, she did a complete 180, worked from flow, got all of her service offerings down to one, right? Signed a 6-figure a year client soon after that. And then that leaped or springboarded basically for her to sign the first person on her list that she had been wanting to work with for years and years. And now she's working with them, traveling all over the country with them. And she's absolutely loving life. And so I want to be clear that it wasn't, I gave her my doctrine and said, you have to operate from flow. It was, your value says be bold, and you are being stuck in this, I need to behave this way, business owner. Whereas it's like, no, we need to have you go your own way. And when you go your own way, you start becoming a magnet for other people. So let's be clear about the role of the room and center out. These people did all of the work. The room just accelerated the truth. Instead of thinking, I could use this, we let the truth be the number one voice, and we followed accordingly to that plan. So let's recap why the right problem in the right room is so powerful. There's no curriculum. You are the curriculum. There's no agenda, because we need a lot of context. We need a lot of individuality. We need the truth to take center stage, not some plan. Essentially, we're beholden to the truth, whether we like it or not. And I tell my clients, we don't live in imagination and certainty. We live in reality and possibility. See, imagination is actually limiting. When we let truth be the hero, we push past those imagination limits every day. And here's the container that makes that happen. It's really simple. 2 people in a room, full confidence, full trust, full conviction, full belief, where we let truth be the hero. so that your next move becomes obvious when funneled through what you value most. So here's kind of the working model if you want to think of it this way. Like I said, I'm obsessed with the root. So we start there. The root is your values, what you believe is true for you. We funnel everything through that, which means that becomes your filter. Filter is to say, what do I value and what's noise? And by knowing those things, that becomes pretty clear. Then it becomes a decision. What do you want to decide to do with that information, right? What level do you want to get to? What uncertain and scary thing do you want to go for, right? And then you act on that thing, always keeping values front of mind, right? Always saying, does this align with what I care about or does it not, right? And there's that voluntary or involuntary misalignment. It's okay to do voluntary for a short time, right? Once you have that action, then it comes back into evidence, right? And that's why we live in reality and possibility, because we can imagine that something didn't go our way. But when truth is center stage, that's where evidence is obvious. We cannot dispute the truth. And in doing this, you are forming your identity over time, right? You're not going to stay in this current one forever. You're going to continue to grow, but you're going to have a clear mechanism because it aligns with what you care about. When we strip everything else away, all that's left are your values. So we never abandon those and we let them be the star. So what's the deeper mechanism behind this? I said everybody already has the answer inside their head. It's just covered and buried under 2 inches worth of dirt. And what's the dirt? The dirt is borrowed certainty. It's other people's opinions. It's inherited rules. It's the person who appears further ahead being really, really loud on social media and forcing you to feel behind. In the end, though, it's really simple. The dirt is choosing the wrong room to solve the right problem. So that's what I do. What I do is I create a space to where we sweep away the dirt so that the obvious thing that aligns with you is revealed. And this next bit is incredibly important. It's kind of the whole damn thing, really, is ownership. I can't own the answer, which means I don't tell you the answer. I don't source your agency for you, right? If I own the answer, I'll own the reward. I say this a lot to people is think of whether you have kids or not. Your 10-year-old comes to you with a homework problem and says, hey, mom, dad, can you help me with this problem? Are you just going to give them the answer? No. You are going to empower them to go find the answer for themselves because you understand the real skill is having the ability to solve problems for themselves. You're no different. That's the value of the room because the only way you will transform is if you own the work, which means you own the decision, which really means you get to own the reward. I cannot promise comfort. I can promise truth. I'll likely tell you, I can't care about your life more than you, and I care an awful lot, which means I can't have us be comfortable all the time. If the truth is the hero, it's not always going to be nice. Certainty is not always going to be around every corner. We have to have full trust, full conviction, and create that space that the room provides to allow the truth to be heard. Here's something that everybody needs to hear. I wish they taught it in school. Is maybe you had this idea that you wanted to create your own business to have an easier life, right? That's a complete misnomer. You don't want an easier life because easy involves complacency. It involves knowledge. It involves certainty. And if you are dead set on growing and improving and building, the reward for growing and building and improving is approaching uncertainty, approaching failure, knowing that you're not going to have all the answers and doing it anyway. And so the last thing I will promise to you is that working with me gives you an easier life. It doesn't, because the person who wants an easier life is saying, here's my level, I want to stay there. You don't want to stay at this level, which means you need to embrace challenges. And so instead of saying, I'm going to help you have an easier life, I'm going to help you become a person who can handle challenges with ease. And this lines up directly with the only promise I make is that you will be the person you trust the most to meet these challenges. No more outsourcing, no more comparison, no more outside in. You're going to funnel it through your center and approach every challenge and have total faith, trust, and belief that you're going to be the person to meet that. So let's wrap this up. When you filter everything from the center out, outsized results follow. When that client who created the AI studio let creativity lead instead of the business operator, he 3x'd his previous best result. When family led for my client who was working holidays, nights, and weekends, she booked that 10-year trip to Disney and now spends the majority of her time being a mom, which is exactly what she wants and has never been more profitable. When boldness led My most skeptical client operated from flow and actually signed her dream clients by being bold, by being her. And when kindness led, my client who's still in progress is realizing that the highest paying client, the expense in time is too high, and it's going to keep her from hitting greatness if she stays at this level. So it all happens in the same way. We identify the value, we let it lead, we remove what misaligns, we act from conviction, and then we create evidence. That's why this room exists. It creates transformations that serve the root, not the surface, and the fruit tastes insanely good. Conviction is the promise, the room is the container, and the next step is actually incredibly simple. So if you watch to the end of this video, the next step is really clear, actually. There is a Google Doc in the description down below. It takes about 60 seconds to read, nothing crazy. And if you resonate with this video and resonate with a document, I would have you join the waitlist. There's a link down at the bottom of the document. That doesn't mean we'll actually work together. There's no salespeople. There's no major automation. It doesn't kick off anything like that. It is just your expression of intent to learn more, right? And I only work with a handful of people a year. So I don't want you to think that there's some massive machine behind this. No, it'll actually prompt a personal email from me, which give me time, by the way, since there are no automations. I'll get to you as soon as I can. And that'll spark a conversation. We'll grab a coffee together, whatever it may be, and I'll learn a little bit more about why you expressed interest to begin with. If you don't resonate with it, all good, right? But my number one hope for you, whether you take action or just now have this information and want to sit with it for a while, is that whether you work with me or not, whether you take an action or not, the most important thing to me is that you become the person you trust the most. If you can do that on your own, please don't pay me. Please do that. But if you think you could use my help, if you think you could use the room, if you think you could use Center Out, if you think you could just use someone to not do it alone, then go ahead and read the document. If that hits you in the right way, join the waitlist as well. Very, very easy. And thanks for watching.